In the spring of 1982, a general made a bet. He was running a country in crisis, the economy was collapsing, people were on the streets, and his grip on power was slipping. And so Leopoldo Galtieri, the dictator of Argentina, decided to invade a group of islands in the South Atlantic that his country had claimed for 150 years. The bet wasn't really about the islands, it was about America. Galtieri believed the United States would remain neutral if it became a military event. Argentina had been helping the Reagan administration fund the Contras in Nicaragua. The junta assumed they'd be rewarded as a result. That Washington would look the other way and Britain would accept the situation for what it was without sending its forces, and Galtieri could have a patriotic victory. He was, though, terribly, terribly wrong. The Falkland Islands sit roughly 300 miles off the Argentine coast and about 800 miles from London. Around 3,600 people, mostly of British descent, live there. Britain has administrated the islands since 1833, but Argentina has never accepted that. And by April 1982, the junta had run out of patience. Galtieri believed Britain would never, ever fight. Even when the US Secretary of State Haig told him directly that Britain would fight and win, Galtieri said the British would not fight. And on the 2nd of April, Argentine forces landed on the Falklands and overwhelmed the small British garrison on the islands. What happened next is where it gets complicated. The Reagan administration was split on this. The US had long maintained neutrality on Falklands sovereignty. The UN ambassador for the US, Jean Kirkpatrick, didn't want to alienate Argentina, a key Cold War partner in Latin America. And the US Defense Secretary, Caspar Weinberger, believed failing to back Britain would reward armed aggression. For weeks, the US position was genuinely unclear. Then, Argentina rejected every peace proposal on the table, and America made its choice. It prohibited arms sales to Argentina, provided intelligence and material support to Britain, and behind closed doors, the Pentagon had contingency plans to loan Britain an aircraft carrier if it lost one of its own. That was big news. And Britain won. Argentina surrendered in June, the junta fell, and Galtieri was convicted of incompetence and jailed. Now it's 2026. Javier Mille took office in Argentina in late 2023. He's rarely been out of the headlines for both good and bad reasons, but his approval is now at its lowest since he came to power. Inflation is rising again in Argentina, and his cabinet chief is under investigation for illicit enrichment. Mille once boasted that his government had fired an official for buying a coffee machine, but now he can't explain how his colleague afforded an all-cash trip to Aruba, a private jet getaway to Uruguay, and 2 properties bought on a salary of $2,500 a month. It won't thus surprise you that Argentina population now rank corruption as their top concern. When a leader is in this kind of trouble, history tells you what comes next. Galtieri knew. He invented the playbook after all. So it's time for Mille to push on the Malvinas, what the Argentines call the Falklands. And a recent Pentagon email leak has appeared, suggesting the US could actually withdraw diplomatic support for British sovereignty as a punishment for NATO allies who didn't back America's war in Iran. Mille immediately declared the islands were, are and always will be Argentine after those reports. His deputy said Falklanders should go back to England. Now, the difference between 1982 and today is this. Galtieri had to guess what Washington would do. Mille doesn't have to guess quite as hard. He has a close ally in the White House, already publicly questioning Britain's position on numerous things. Secretary of State Marco Rubio called the leaked memo just an email and said people were getting overexcited. But that's the kind of thing you say when you want to avoid a diplomatic incident when King Charles is in town. It's not the same as saying the idea is wrong. The official US position reiterated this week is neutrality on sovereignty. That's been America's formal position for a while now. It's also was America's formal position in April 1982, right up until it wasn't. Now, Britain won in 1982 not because its legal claim was strongest, it won because it mobilises military effectively and because a political decision was made in Washington, shaped by the Cold War, by the nature of the Argentine regime and by people who believed armed aggression had to be punished, whoever was doing it. Those conditions were specific to that moment. Galtieri miscalculated American intentions. He assumed a relationship meant protection. He was wrong, and it cost him everything. Britain is now making its own assumptions about where it stands in Washington's calculations, and it's doing so with a much weakened military. The Falklands are British by law, by democratic mandate, and by the sacrifice of the people who fought for them. But legal positions do not defend themselves. The question isn't what America's position is today, it's what it would be when it really, really matters. I'm Gavin McGaw. If you find this of interest, please follow and share, and I'll be back soon with more stories behind power and reputation. See you next time.